Going. Okay. Good afternoon. Today is July 24th, 2023. It is 4:01 p.m. As a quorum of the committee is in attendance, I would like to call to order the meeting of the Central Health Ad Hoc Appointment Committee. As a reminder, some of our committee members may also be participating by video conference, so the staff will be managing video and audio feeds of all participants closely to make sure we have a legally compliant meeting at all times. The first item of business is public communication. Members of the public who wish to make comments virtually during the public communications portion of the meeting must have registered with Central Health via the online form or by telephone no later than 2:30 p.m. today. Did anyone register to make comments for the Ad Hoc Appointments Committee meeting?
We do not have anyone signed up to make public comments.
Thank you. We'll now proceed to the committee agenda. Agenda 1 is discuss and take appropriate action on determining criteria for a timeline to be used by the Appointments Committee to solicit, evaluate, and recommend candidates for appointment to outside boards and committees. Chair Bell and I will be presenting on this item.
You want me to go first?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, members. What we're looking at here as far as the timeline is, if you look at agenda item 2, there's A, B, C, D, and E. And in essence, what I feel is important is that we put some timelines on that so that, in essence, we can get that done and get the appointment done. So I'm not sure if you had any suggestions as far as timelines are concerned, Chair, but I do think that if nothing else, we can outline time periods and, like days or weeks, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, when we get a request, they would put dates into that.
Correct. And I think that, and I'm open to discussion on this issue about a timeline about once a request is made to Central Health for an appointment, that we not take too long to review that. And I'm open for ideas since I'm unaware of Central Health in terms of how long this typically will take to muster up candidates. A week, 2 weeks? Does anybody have any experience? Yes.
Go ahead.
Did you have anything to say?
No, I was just going to say, I think we've done it in the past where we've kept it out there at least for a month or a month and a half, just mainly because of the fact that we need for people to see it. If we put it out there for 2 weeks, nobody sees it, we get no responses whatsoever.
So,
But I'll yield to Moreau.
thank you. I actually also, before we even solicit any new candidates, we need to go back. I think our process should be in 2 phases. A, who are currently on the board, who are seeking reappointment. I think we should have a process for them before we solicit any candidates. If they are not interested in a reappointment, or if they've reached the capacity, their term limit, we should also consider a different way. So I think we should be mindful of who is on and proactively solicit. So just to reiterate what I said, if let's say a board member on Sendero Health, their term ends in September 2023, we start the process, let's say at least 2 months prior, or 3. We ask them, are you interested in reappointment? If they do, we should probably at least have a process in place that we can bring them forth, or they can share whatever we decide on. And if they're not interested, or if they exceeded their term limit, we open it up based on the criteria that we've selected. So that's just a 2-phase way that we don't neglect those who are on the committees, rather than just going off and soliciting for candidates who even did not have an opportunity to express their interest of reappointments or not. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, Manager Cited. So I think what you're saying is, and I'm just going to use this as an example. I was a member of the Sendero board. My term limit came up in 2022. So a couple of months before that, you would talk to me, ask me if I wanted to be reappointed, and then have a process by which I would come before the committee, all right, and whatever process y'all decide on, and then that recommendation is brought to the full board. Is that what you're saying, or am I wrong?
You're correct. I'm just saying, but I also, as you were stating it, we need to be very careful. Like, I think we should have a criteria of internal candidate. I want to consider them internal, whoever's on our board. Maybe this is a candidate who happens to have some issues with their fellow board members. Maybe their board members do not want to continue on. Maybe there's other issues, but we need to be mindful of it. But I also want us to be very mindful of if they are expressed and they've done a great job and they're interested in continuing on, we should prioritize them, give them an opportunity to seek reappointment.
And
If I may,
Go ahead.
I would propose that if the chair of, say, Sendero, they know their term is going to expire, the other board member, that they would I would suggest they just simply submit to the appointments board that this person wishes to continue. We've been very happy with their service. Do we need to really revisit that again if they're performing their duties well?
And if I'll say it this way, I think that it is somewhat of an insult if I've done well and I've decided that I want to be reappointed, for you to put out a request for other individuals to be competing. Because if that's the case, then you're sort of sending me the message, you don't really want me.
I
Yes.
apologize if that's how I came off, but no. What my idea is that we reach out initially to the current board appointee, and if they're in good standing, we grant their whatever a reappointment, however, but not to solicit additional candidates.
Okay.
But if they are not interested or they're questionable,
Sure.
then we should solicit candidates.
I agree
So
with
that's
you.
my opinion. So I don't know if others concur or not.
Thank you. I would concur with that. I would favor feedback from the chair of that board primarily to say, we're very happy with this person, they show up, they do their work, they have insight, and I don't think they have to be through a vetted process at that point.
I think you're right. The burden, though, becomes who's going to tell that board. If the chair says that board member is not a good board member, we'll need to ask the chair if the chair has told that board member that they're not a good board member. Because if the chair just tells it to us, then it becomes a burden on us to have to bring that board member in and say, you're not a good board member. So, I mean, we need to think about that.
Yes, and I think we should delegate that to the board chair, the board, to say, if this person's working out, it should not fall to us to parse that out.
Okay.
And if they don't recommend the person, then let it be known, and then we proceed with.
So, to make
Yes.
it easier on the respective chair, perhaps we should have a set of criteria. If their attendance, I think that should be a factor in their reappointment. If this board member is just there, just figuratively not attending any board meetings, they're having issues with quorum, that can really erupt the business. So maybe we could have a set of criterias that we can make it very fair and transparent to the candidate. So it could be attendance, one, working.
No, go ahead.
Oh,
No, sorry. I just
so,
wanted- okay.
like a framework, I think that should be very clear. So when the respective board goes and checks off, it's like, you know what, I don't recommend their reappointment based on these issues. That is very clear. And they should also have some examples, like you've missed 5 meetings out of the 10 or however percentage-wise. But, you know, sometimes we all have conflicting issues. We may not be able to attend every single meeting. But we've had instances as a board here. We've had board members who did not attend very infrequently. And I don't think it's fair for other board members who are dedicating their time. So that's really the recommendation, to ease that issue on the respective chair. That just really 3 simple questions they can base it off. Thank you.
Okay. Manager Kitchen, I'm sorry, I didn't see the yellow hand raised.
That's okay. No problem. It's hard to see. I was just going to comment. I think the conversation you've just had sort of is what I was thinking. I was just thinking it would be important to have some kind of objective criteria if you're going to rely on existing board, because there may be differences of opinion across the existing board. So that's what can make it difficult, and it may be that the chair may not have a good relationship, but the rest of the board might. So that's what makes it really difficult. But I think you're getting there, because I think what I heard you just say is have a couple of very specific, perhaps more objective questions, as well as a subjective question, and the committee, you all can consider that when you're considering how you want to move forward with someone's reappointment. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, so you would suggest the adoption of certain objective questions to a board chair?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can have a subjective one also. I mean, I'm not saying to the exclusion, but that would help give you some more information. Attendance is a pretty straightforward one that's important. So I don't know what else.
Well, I think we should formulate a set of questions if we're going to proceed with that, because I think to keep it fairly simple and.
You've got
Yes,
a
Manager
question
Jones.
here, and then
Yes.
the CEO.
Manager Jones.
Yeah, I look at this sort of a big picture from the beginning towards the end. I guess our role is to recommend to the board someone to represent the board on a commission or board or whatever. At that point, I think we need to have some kind of evaluative measure of what we build into that appointment process, so that we can evaluate by way of the board's chair, as well as ourselves, whether or not he or she met that expectation. Because my experience has been that we constantly are appointing people all the time, but rarely do I ever hear back from them on what's going on or hear our interaction with them. So is there some way to us as the board, not the committee, but the board, to be able to evaluate whether that appointment that was made met the expectation of the board itself?
Manager Bell.
No, I totally agree with you. I think that what we're trying to do here is mainly to outline sort of a general process. And in that general process, I do believe there needs to be roles and responsibilities of the individuals that we appoint. But we're trying to sort of walk through what the process and the timeline for the process is. I think we got sidetracked a little talking about appointment versus reappointment, which is true. I mean, we get a lot of people that are reappointed, and maybe that's one of your objective criteria that Manager Kitchen and Manager Musaiti talked about, is attendance and the number of times that member has communicated with the board that has appointed them.
Right, exactly.
All right? And of course, they have to know that. I mean,
Yeah, right.
we can't expect it if we haven't told them.
But that should be part of the criteria that we put
Totally.
forth when the appointment is made, is that
Totally
on a
agree.
frequent basis of whatever, that you report back to the board about the objectives that we've indicated or the objective of the agency that has been achieved, something like that.
Yeah, I do believe we need to talk about responsibilities, but we will once we.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Chairman,
okay.
item 2 kind of hashes that out a little
Right, exactly. So,
Mike, did
Mike, do you have a question?
Just for the committee's consideration, really, I think Manager Jones, you made a good point. If I could just echo that to say in advance of when the appointment is made, to say, now, should you come up for reappointment, these are criteria that you need to be thinking about. But then also giving that individual the opportunity to respond to those criteria or questions, if you will, upon reappointment is another consideration for the committee, because there might be personality or political differences between the board chair and a particular member that, when you're thinking about objectively, has this person contributed to the board that they're on, attended, and so forth, may set up some biases in terms of answering those questions. So again, all this can be worked through. I'm just getting it out there for the committee's consideration. Thank you.
No, those are good points. Anyone else? Yes.
We're talking about appointments to Sendero and to community care, or are we talking about all, including, okay, I don't have that sheet.
It's in your packet.
It's hiding. Okay, it's hiding. So, what about for Central Health Board?
That's
We're not gonna
not-
talk about that?
We don't have any.
But that's handled by
No, that's not handled by the two appointing
The
entities.
city council and the
Okay,
county.
so with respect to,
We can recommend it to them.
I'll recommend again, I've been the subject of some of that, to be factual. And so, one of the things that I'm concerned about, and would hope that we would be able to tighten this up a little bit, is our appointments to like Sendero, okay? If we created Sendero, we're gonna have Sendero, under our wing. They're going to always be apparently full of nothing but Central Health staff or board members. So are we ever going to have public appointees to the Sendero board? I think that's an issue we need to consider. If we are going to in fact have appointees to the Sendero board, then what will they be represented of? Are we gonna have a third staff, a third board members, and a third public? Something like that is something I would like for us to look at, because I think it's important. We send a lot of mixed messages to the public and to the appointing of us entities, the city council and the county commissioners, as to, well, how many hats can you wear when you're sitting at the table? You're paid by Central Health. Central Health believes we do not want to expand, or we don't want to offer Medicaid services. You are employed by Central Health. You go to the Sendero board. Sendero's issue is whether or not we're going to include providing Medicaid options to that member population. What hat are you going to wear? And how can we, because we're humans, how can we properly keep ourselves divided in such a way that I'm not going to be influenced by the fact that I work with all these people, I've been with them for years, blah, 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 and they don't want to include Medicaid options for us, for our Sendero members. Over here in the public realm, we may have one or two or nobody on the Sendero board, because they don't exist, that want to offer Medicaid as a service. Whereas some board members like myself, I do believe that Medicaid should be offered by Sendero, because I've also looked at all the other healthcare districts in the state of Texas, and we're the only ones that don't offer that. If you have bothered to look at the sheet that I tried to get out to everybody. But that's important to me. It's a matter of what do we as board members believe are viable options for access to health care for those that are going the Sendero route under ACA, blah, blah, blah. All those things need to be options. But we as a board have to have that discussion about what we would think. Now, if we're going to make a decision as a board and have a conversation and say it's always going to be just Central Health appointees of Central Health staff or board members, then I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure it's not
And Chair Martin, it might be best
Topic
to
for another,
take both items at the same time.
Yeah,
We
well,
can comment
so
them so we can have this
yeah,
flesh out all the
Yeah,
discussion.
you're addressing an issue, but what you're addressing, Manager Valadez, is valid, but argue that that would be one of the criteria for our questions for the appointments that we handle. Is there a conflict of interest, for example?
That's exactly right.
But that's what we're here to discuss, is
And that's
what those list of questions are going to be, and to set that criteria down.
And that is to me, in my head, that's a conflict of interest. I'm getting 100% of my income from Central Health, and Central Health, I'm sitting here on the Senate board, and Central Health has its priorities, and this isn't one of them, so anyway, that to me is a conflict.
Well, thank you, but I think that's the issue addressing sort of the criteria for.
And Chair,
It needs to have.
it might be best just to call out item number 2, so we have, that is going back and
Oh,
forth.
back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay.
So discussing item number 2, it's number 1, recruitment of candidates. Discuss and take appropriate action on steps to be followed by the committee in evaluating candidates for appointments, including recruitment of candidates, evaluation of written applications using established criteria for vetting candidates, establish an interview process and development of questions, procedure for recommending a sole finalist for consideration by the full board of managers, and notification of successful and non-selected candidates.
Yes, okay, so then let me, so that's, I guess what I just responded or suggested were comments based on the second.
Right,
So with respect to the first one, I'd like to know if candidates have experiences, learned or direct, with either the insurance arena or with community care and poverty populations. Because we have entertained people in the past who have zero experience with a poverty population, and yet they've been appointed.
Well,
And so I think that we as a board, and for the public's edification, need to understand that what we want is the best practice. We want the best candidate, and you can't have a candidate that has zero experience with our poverty population and yet consider them qualified to sit on a board. Yes, they can be philanthropic, yes, they can do this and that and the other, but there has got to be some fundamental foundation for that knowledge and experience for them to have. Either they grew up in a poverty neighborhood, they have worked with a nonprofit or a company or an agency in a world that impacts people who are our targeted population for our agencies. But those things should be priorities and not lackadaisical considerations.
well, thank you, Manager Brinson.
What I would suggest is that when the time comes to when we are making the questions, when we're writing the questions, that you bring up those issues.
Well,
Yes.
because
Because
we're talking about.
we're talking about first and foremost about recruitment of candidates, about what that process will be. We discussed about asking the board what candidate they want. If they need someone with financial experience, legal experience, or lived experience, whatever the case may be, that we decide how we're going to process that actual recruitment and how we will then direct Central Health to find those candidates.
Well, I think that's what I spoke to. Unless maybe I'm not making myself clear
Why?
to you.
Well,
But what I'm getting to is that we should look at ensuring that any candidate that we are going to interview or consider have the basic requirements for sitting as a board member in a financial or decisive position, and that is only through their previous experience and their knowledge in either now or lived, and also their demographic, because our demographic has not always been an uppermost priority or consideration. And when I look at the
If you look at the second agenda, you can see that the interview process and the development.
that's, yeah.
Oh, sorry. So you can see that the interview process and the development of our questions is number C. We have other things we need to do
Yeah,
also
so-
first.
Right.
So
Well,
yeah,
also,
okay.
first, as far as I'm concerned, first, we need to decide what our board members should be addressing at the community care and the Sendero level, and that is making sure that our members for either Sendero or community care have access to all the resources that they have been, that entity has been created to provide.
But may
Right,
I
but
understand
we're
this?
right now, we're
trying to
still on
discuss
the
this.
candidate.
How do we go about the process of recruitment of candidates? How do we direct Central Health to get us candidates?
Okay,
We will
so-
discuss later, and we can all formulate our own set of questions and criteria to have an open discussion about what each of ours criteria is. I think we'd all agree on conflict of interest, et cetera. But right now, we need to sort of give a decision about our process and open discussion about our recruitment of candidates and how
Well,
that process will
with respect to
occur.
recruitment of candidates, we've developed a lengthy list of organizations that we work with and that we partner with. And
Here.
no light. Oh, there it is. There. Thank you. Thank you. That's orange.
Chair,
It's going between
yellow and.
orange and red and green. Thank you, Dr. Bell. So with respect to us, I pushed for the creation of the healthcare champions. I pushed that we create an entity that would address equity issues at Central Health Board because they had not previously looked at that. And so one of the things that I had hoped is that that would be a resource for Central Health to have possible candidates because they would have gone through the process of understanding what Central Health is and the enterprise. And or if they're not from this area and they just moved in and are interested in serving, they may have been working with, either MHMR in another county or these kinds of activities. But that is very important.
Okay.
But that experience.
Point of question,
Yes.
information.
Yeah, Jim.
I'm confused. So
Maybe I am.
are we in the process of trying to identify criteria to be used that we would take in consideration for the selection of board members?
This is for the appointments committee to other boards, and so
Right.
we need to. The first item is to how do we go about recruiting candidates? What
Okay,
direction
But,
do we get?
but for those of us who are novice to this, are these the boards to whom we're appointing them to?
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't seem to me that one criteria would fit all of these boards.
Exactly. And so we had discussed about having, and that will segue into the next set of questions, about having a base set of criteria overall, a knowledge of equity, a knowledge of inclusion, but then specific criteria for a specific board, and from that, to some extent, receive feedback from the board chair about what their needs are. And does this candidate now fit those needs that the board is
I
needing?
follow you now. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, that there has to be a set of questions, and then specifically to said board.
Board, okay. Because I wasn't following us in that previous process.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Just to follow up, and how do you want to break this up? These are the committees that we assign, and when we're evaluating them based on the list of questions, like for instance, would you combine integral care with community care and Sendero as one bucket and the rest in a different bucket? So I'm just trying to figure out.
Well, let's open a discussion. I think the gist is to have, once again, a set of questions, and then every specific board is going to have specific needs, and that chair will also have specific needs that he feels or she feels there's a vacuum.
So, I'm just going over what we have here, and based on the high need organization that the three high ones are Sendero, community care, and integral care. I think those are the top that we should that are the high need, the focus. Like the others, for instance, our compliance officer, like other committees, the criteria is different. Like for instance, the Regional Affordability Committee, that's a sole board member, so I think their criteria is different. So we need to probably distinguish our board appointments that are board members versus a board appointments that are non-board members. Maybe that would be easier. I think having those distinctions.
I agree with you. I think that this list is not necessarily categorized.
Yes.
Okay, so, but I think that of the highest priority are those that are within what we call the enterprise. And so that's definitely Sendero and that's definitely community care. And then the integral board, although they're not a part of the enterprise, I think they're part of the entities that we work with to sort of talk or to deal with, mental health and substance abuse issues. So those three are pretty high on the list. And I think when we start going through and talking about responsibilities and, criteria, et cetera, we need to focus on those three first. Okay? And then the others we can get to on a sort of as needed basis because they're a little bit different than the three that you're talking about. That's my suggestion.
Thank you.
I
Yes.
agree with that, but I just want to make sure that any appointment we made for any of these boards, I'm sorry. Sorry. Any appointments we made for any of these boards should come with a predetermination from the board, direction from the board, that these are the major criteria that we want them to impart into any of these agencies. So whether they're on the capital city and
Right.
innovation, our concern is indigent healthcare in Travis County. And to the degree that your appointment is to do whatever on this, obviously I'm not a member of that board, so I don't know what they do. But if you're appointed to that, then the question becomes is how do you impart that? And so I just want to make sure that goes with the direction when an appointment is finally made.
And I think if we go through it on a one-by-one basis, once we get to that point, the committee will.
Oh, okay.
Then I think you can sort of set that out and say, these are the criteria, because I don't know what, really don't know what Capital City Innovation, what they do, and what their board actually does, but we can have a conversation about that.
Yes, Manager Ellis.
If I'm not mistaken, Mike, didn't CCI, didn't we fund them their first $250,000 when they were being created?
I don't recall the exact amount, but yes, there was some seed funding.
That we gave them. We were one of the organizations that helped create that Capital City CCI, but it was not put underneath our enterprise, which was a considerable concern that I had. Because if they're, and now I notice that they're here. So I'm wondering, why have we not had an update about CCI for as long as they've been in existence, that we helped create them? And I always wondered what they were doing with UT people over there, and because that's what they're doing. And so I think that it's fair for the board members, especially since we contributed financially to their existence, should know what it is that they do and whether or not they are actually, in fact, working on strategies or programming or anything to help close our gaps, disparities gaps, because that's a priority for us.
Correct, and this issue, thank you. That's an issue I think related to these sets of questions we would pose to that person. Okay, but right now, once
Sir,
again, go ahead.
Let me just clarify. No, I'm talking about yes for appointments, future appointments, but I'm talking about if maybe that's something we need to put on an agenda item so that we can, Dr. Bell, so that we can receive an update about this.
And yes,
So,
and that
because I have those. I remember I asked for those bylaws, which I had to go jump through over the river and through the woods to try and get a copy of their bylaws, and I have them collecting dust somewhere on my desk or under it, but we've never had a discussion about them since. And if we are truly interested and making sure that our appointments are reflective of our board priorities and our issues, especially as we were legislatively created to do, then I think that it's important that not only we, but the public know that this is what we're doing.
Thank you. I'd like to state that probably everyone's priorities are the same sitting at this table.
I would hope so.
And, well, thank you. Once again, we need direction on how we proceed with recruitment of candidates, number one. Let's try to stick to this, okay? What direction shall we proceed with? Yes, Manager.
I think that given the information by the chair of the board that we're appointing to, they may need legal, they may need medical, they may need whatever professional void that they feel that they have on the board that they would like to fill. That's probably going to lead us to some specialty organizations that we would want to recruit to. Other than that, I do think that we recruit to the organization you were on. I'm blanking on it for some reason or not. Community Health Champions. I think Austin Leadership, and organizations that we look at for members for board leadership. I think those are the types of organizations we should actually solicit to and see if you have any names. And the other thing I'd say is that we first start off in-house. So ask the board members first if they have any information. If staff have anyone that they know that they might want to recruit, or not necessarily recruit, but to inform that you have a position open. And then the other groups that I talked about, the community champions, the specialty associations if necessary, our affiliates, so individuals that we are affiliated with, etc.
So, thank you. So, yes, Manager Valdez.
And I totally agree with what Dr. Bell is saying, but I'd also like for us to expand that list too, because we have organizations in this county and in Central Texas that have specialized in working to close disparities gaps and to making sure that various organizations and governmental entities are reflective of the demographics that they're supposed to be serving. And as you can see, we have failed in achieving that. But one of the things that we do know is that such Urban League, Latino Healthcare Forum, there are a lot of organizations that exist that this is their sole, really a priority mission for existing, and they do provide input to the various governmental entities, and sometimes to us, not often, but I think because there's still that not fully understanding of what their role would be and how they could help us accomplish our mission. But I think that would be good, because they do exist, they do exist.
Thank you. So I would suggest then, for example, some of the organizations you mentioned, Manager Bell's mentioned, we discussed earlier the Travis County Medical Society, et cetera, approaching certain people who all come from varied backgrounds, who maybe perhaps grew up in poverty, and that's fine, but to direct staff to have a list of people to approach and to use the chair's criteria from the other appointment board, what they would like. Yes,
I would also like to add to that the new philanthropist, an organization that trains and mentors board members of color. I think we need to reach out. There is a really great program their candidates go through, and they're looking for opportunities. And I see a board member back there, Ms. Cavazos, so she's very familiar. So if we need to reconnect to that board, she can help us out. So they do mentor board members of color. So that was I just wanted to add to that list of what was mentioned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If we can move on to B, logistical thinking. How would we suggest evaluation of written applications, establish criteria? And I was going to propose perhaps that each person in this committee decide that for themselves. We then discuss it, bring it back to our next meeting, and discuss the criteria that we wish to present to formulate what the application would look like for everyone. Any input? Yes.
You know, I'm a person that I don't really like to reinvent the wheel. If there is an application out there, mimic it what the city, what the county does to follow through rather than starting from scratch, and we can adapt it and tailor it to our needs. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you. What else? Okay.
Did you have?
Yes, I was just gonna add to that, I wanted to make sure that, and I like personally applications that provide the applicant with an opportunity to write something about what they feel they could offer to the board that they're being, or wanting to be considered for. I think that's a good way for us to maybe see what they have to say before we meet them, get their ideas for who they think, what they are, what they'd like to accomplish, and using their own words. So
Okay, thank you. I'm very much in favor of that. I would argue that we need to limit the words.
I agree with you. No, I agree with you.
I don't want a 12-page document.
Yeah.
But I think that's a very good suggestion as part of the application. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
If I may, I came across recently an application, and I'm going to really state for the record, to join the newly Public Health Commission. I found that to be a very long, lengthy application that limits candidates, like the requirements, having references and recommendations even prior to applying. I think we need to make our process accessible, easy. Like if we are selecting, if they're the final candidates, then they can bring forth these references. But to state it up front, I think that adds additional barriers, especially to those who are trying to reach out. If I see an application that is very long, I'm less likely to commit the time and the time to complete it. So I'm recommending that we make our applications very right to the point, targeted, and not lengthy. And I concur with you, the word limit, an opportunity for them to express themselves. But I oppose for us to make it to hinder the process and to make it more challenging for those who may not have the time and resources to spend hours to complete an application.
Well, thank you.
Just one last thing, very
Yes.
quickly, and I apologize. Also making sure that in the application process or the interview process, that we know very clearly whether or not there exists any conflicts. They know us, we work with them, we've had relationships with them, blah, blah, blah. I think that's important for us to know.
And I would agree with you. Thank you. I would like to get down to a little more specifics about what an application might look like. Education. What else
Experience.
would people like to? Work experience.
Work experience and
Previous board.
extracurricular, like they may have a lot of civic and community contributions and work that they do that may not, in some people's mind, carry the same weight that what you do and get paid for does. But in my opinion, a lot of what people do in the community is as important, as sometimes more important than what they may be paid to do. So I think that's
Okay, thank you.
also an opportunity for them to shine.
That's a good point to make. So education, community services, work experience, anyone?
Dr. Brinson?
Manager Brinson?
Work experience of previous board or organizational places that they've served. And maybe I would want to know, why are they applying? Why this board?
That's why I like the essay.
And okay, so yes, and get that, and then I think that at that point, then we'd submit, once they're approved, submit the questionnaire to them. Once it's sort of that basic. So this is the basic application. Yes, manager.
I think also something that we need to be very clear, their availability and timing. I think that's something critical that is somewhat not very clear to candidates, their time commitment. So if someone works a 9 to 5 job, which definitely, or an odd job, do they have that flexibility? Do their work allow them? They may be the great candidates, but yet they don't have that flexibility to attend or make a quorum. So just to add that.
Okay, no, that's a good point. Thank you. Anyone else?
Did you have your hand up, Manager Jones? No, oh, sorry.
You're off to my side, so. So we need to develop a set of questions, and I think that's what we had discussed earlier, particularly Manager Valdez, about sort of a set of questions we need to ask people. And I think we should, at our next meeting, we should all bring together sets of questions. And there's examples here, what Sandero used, and as a baseline, I think I would argue we need to not flood people with questions, but sort of direct it. And then I would add in addition a separate little set of questions relative to the board they wish to be appointed to. Okay? So I hope that the next meeting we have a chance to review sets of questions, and then we'll discuss at the next meeting and vote on a set of questions to approve and give to the Central Health. Any input?
Should we prepare the questions and send them in prior to the meeting to expedite the time, or should we wait till we get here to entertain it?
I would discuss, I think here, I have this, a little bit discussion, so we can, I think we can.
That doesn't always work.
Yeah, I think having discussion. I would rather have a discussion in person. I think we can.
No.
Send them in prior to
yeah.
So that we can collate everybody's questions.
I would defer to you then, since you have more experience.
I think that you should submit all your questions to Brianna. Brianna will forward them to the chair and myself. We'll collate them so that we can look at everybody's questions, and then that's what we'll discuss.
Okay.
Okay?
That would expedite it a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine.
So
Yes.
I think we also brought forward some suggestions. Can those be incorporated rather than us sending them again? I think we suggested some questions, and I'm pretty sure that you're taking some notes just to include those.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're okay with that. We have a procedure and a vote for recommending the sole finalist, because the idea of this committee is to take one finalist to the board of managers, say, this is who we want, and you have questions, ask us.
And I just want to say, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, please.
Unless the lawyers tell me differently, you guys can actually weed out and vet down to the one person, and then you recommend that one person to the board, and the board can appoint that person. Is that legal? Okay.
Okay.
That's what they did with us.
Yeah, that's true.
So, but I think that had that conversation, vote, and all agree. We can agree or disagree or whatever, but the majority takes that then to the whole board to sort of make things quick. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
So in the past, that used to go on the consent agenda. So is that how we're planning on doing it? And then if someone had a question, you pulled it out, but you.
It really depends. I think I usually determine by the attendance of the committee meeting whether something actually should be on consent or not. If you have a large number of individuals here at the committee meeting, there really isn't any reason for us to go over it again. Mm-hmm. If you do have a member who's concerned that, they see the name, they may have some input about the name, whatever, they can pull that, and then we can discuss it at the time. But most of the attendance at the meetings have been pretty much a majority of the board. Mm-hmm. So.
Okay. So it'd be left as a consent agenda?
It would be a consent agenda unless there's some reason that we feel like it needs to be on the regular agenda, or each member has the privilege of pulling a consent agenda and having us talk about it.
Thank you. Finally, we discussed about, and primarily about notification of non-selected candidates. I think we need to encourage people that have taken the time to apply, that want to volunteer their time, to re-encourage them, to explain to them why they were not chosen, and encourage them to stay involved in the community. And we had suggested an email, perhaps even a letter signed by the committee, thanking them for their time. Yes, ma'am.
I really like the idea of following up with candidates we did not select and at least giving them an explanation. I think that should be a practice amongst all organizations because it is really providing them with concrete feedback that they can
Did you
work
say
on.
phone call? I'm sorry, following up.
Following up,
Following up,
up.
not
Oh,
necessarily
oh,
an email.
Okay, I'm sorry.
whatever, anything.
Oh, no, I think an email from the chair of the committee or whoever, just out of courtesy and appreciation of their attendance, because they're taking some time to
And,
spend with us.
Thank you. And I would argue that an email, I'd like to send a printed version signed by the committee, saying thank you for your time, we appreciate it. It means a lot. I think it's a substantive issue. Yes, Manager.
Yes, and because I have done that in the past, and I did tell our CEO that I had done that, and I was made aware of some facts, or at least some information that I thought was something we should have had prior to the vote, but it didn't happen. And so this is what I would look at as a good opportunity for us to improve the process so that this does not happen again. And also to let the others that may not have been selected know that we might be considering them for other positions and appointments for the other committees that we would be responsible for making a recommendation about.
You have to put them on a list. I think that's a great idea. Any other input?
Just one quick, it's probably a little trivial, but we'll send a letter with your signature, because trying to get all of these signatures on a letter, too much work for
Got
Brian.
it. Okay.
I'm looking out for you, man.
The chair.
Yeah.
Do we have a profile? I see we've done it for integral care and Sundero, but do we have a profile once again for the ending term for these other appointments?
Not that
I don't know that, Manager Jones. They do have terms. There you go, see ya.
May I?
Yes, Mike.
So actually, I need to address a point that you were making earlier, but Manager Jones, in response to your question, we'll go back and look at that. I think for some, it depends on the requesting organization. So there may not be a term limit, as much as it is we just need a central health representative. But we will go back and check on that.
Okay, that'd be interesting just to see
Sure.
it in this time.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else, Mike?
Yes, I need to go back to the PowerPoint. Thank you for recognizing me on this. It's one thing to call a successful candidate and say congratulations to the board, because I've had to make these calls before myself. You've been selected and have a handoff for an onboarding process. But for those that were not selected, I've had to be very cautious with those phone calls, because a lot of those deliberations were in closed session under attorney-client privilege, and so there are just some things that you cannot divulge. And I will admit that they've been very high-level calls, and I was not able to answer a lot of specific questions that they had. And so I think, my only recommendation here is that, if there is going to be conversations with non-selected candidates, that it's done so with legal counsel to get a really tight script together, so that way you're not.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to make a point. I was not emphasizing a phone call. I'd like a letter reviewed by legal saying that it's more thank you. I'd like to propose something and maybe some feedback. People that are selected, I'd like them recognized in the community some way. A blurb in the Statesman, something that this person was selected to sit on this board. a lot of people don't even know these things exist. And I think it'd be, if we have any pull in that way to do that, I'd like the community outreach to occur for that. Any other comments? Okay.
Just one more. Some of these board members, some of these committees and boards actually have central health staff that participate to a great extent in helping those agencies or those committees do the work that they're supposed to do, that they're responsible for.
Mike?
And I think that it would be a good idea for us to know as board members, if we have central health staff that is also attending these meetings or participating in ways that we may not necessarily know, because in that, to me, that shows how much more central health is contributing to what it is that those committees do, and making sure that our mission is integrated into their work, and that we have other people, we have our own staff that's not only looking out for us and for central health, but for the population that we're serving.
Okay. Thank you very much. No, thank you. Okay. So there will be no action today on this item, but I would like to request that staff summarize today's discussion to bring back to the next committee meeting for approval. I would ask of the committee that you produce a set of questions that you'd like produced for discussion, submit them to Central Health, and they'll be discussed at the next meeting. Oh, yeah, I guess we didn't, that wasn't listed here, but we had discussed if we had a certain number of candidates, say with 15 candidates applied, it's really too many for us to all review. And we had discussed having Central Health review and submit to us people that have met the criteria, say to 3 or 4, and that we would then review those. Does anybody have any set numbers that you wish to give to above a certain number we submit to them?
Good.
I think we should probably think of percentage-wise, because if we, for instance, if we get a board committee, 50 applicants, for instance, which will never happen. I'm just throwing it out. Well, I won't be selected, but I think for fairness, just selecting 3 out of those 50 is not reasonable. I think probably if we can think of at least a small percentage of that, it balances out how many, and then we can, based on our screening, those who rise to the top based on a criteria, who have I don't know if we're doing a scoring or not, to score 9 or above, if we get that many candidates that we should bring forth. But right now, I think it's a little immature for us to select how many, because we don't know the pool of candidates, how many come forth. We may only, for instance, for one, let's say committee, we get 5 applicants. How do you choose those 3 from that 5?
Well, that's what we're asking. Feedback from them to sort of say at some point we simply cannot, if we have 50 applicants, well, 10% of that, my point is, the issue is to limit the work that we realistically can do, rather than be great if we have 50 applicants and to direct them to other boards. Mm-hmm. Yes, Manager Valadez.
One of the priorities for me is demographic representation. So if we're looking at appointing someone to a particular board, and I personally would like to know what the demographics is of that board with respect to their mission, and what the demographics are of the people that we are supposed to be interviewing or considering for application to that particular committee, and seeing if perhaps there's a need to consider the demographic as an issue. I don't want to go DEI and not freak anybody out, but I am saying that I think that considering demographics is important, gender, race, ethnicity, language, those kinds of things are important. And because in the past, historically, there has been a problem or maybe a disparity created or exacerbated by people on the board that were not particularly sensitive to those needs. And so I, just as a precautionary
Well,
and a
thank you.
best practice,
Yeah, and we
a
can
measure.
we can direct Central Health to include that in part of the criteria for how they. But the issue discussion here is, do we have a number to some extent that I know it have to be set in stone, but realistically, do we wish to review?
I like 4.
Yes.
Personally.
Yes, Manager. Yes, Manager Bell.
I think in the experience of trying to get, 4 people to interview and to deliberate on candidates, it really shouldn't be more than 3.
Okay.
That's my
Okay.
opinion.
Manager Brinson? Yes, okay. Manager Jones? Okay. Manager Huffey?
I think based on yes, it's really difficult in terms of logistics. I just want us, just in case if we got a larger pool, to be very, to revisit if we get a larger pool of candidates. So I'm fairly sure, I'm fine with this, comfortable.
Yeah.
But if in the future, if we have more than 10 or more who are interested, I think we need to look at it a little differently.
I think you can always go back if the 3 that the committee decided didn't really fit the bill and there's still more qualified candidates in the pool, you can always bring those candidates up and interview them. So I think that's the case, but logistically, I do have to say, in trying to do that with more than 3 candidates is going to be rough.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Manager Valadez.
I appreciate those words, Dr. Bell. So that would mean a little bit of work on Central Health staff's
Correct.
Role in evaluating the candidates, and then making sure that when they provided us with possibilities, possible applicants, that we at least had some demographic, maybe not even a name in order to protect the candidate, but a demographic breakdown of the applicants. Male, female, this, that, and at least, so this is general. This is for they're going to do this first pass, second pass, but for us to have that ultimately in consideration of finalists.
I think if we do the application, I don't know legally, I can't speak for the legal issues around this, but if you did the application and asked for them to disclose, their ethnicity, I don't think there's any problem with that, but maybe there is.
With we go over the mic. Things that you could ask on an employment application are probably the same things that you can ask on a volunteer board application.
Right.
But you still want to be very careful and very mindful that you are not crossing those lines and blurring lines to the point that you may be doing something that you don't want to be doing, especially considering that this is a board that is out to help those individuals who are of very modest means and very modest resources.
Got it. Thank you. All right. Anything else? So going back to agenda item 1 very quickly, I'd like to suggest that we agree to a 6-week timeline. Okay. I think we've had the other things have been discussed. There'll be no action taken today. No more comments. All right. Agenda 3, I'd like to confirm the next regular Ad Hoc Appointment Committee meeting date, time, and location. Managers, we not currently have a scheduled Central Health Ad Hoc Appointments Committee meeting. When a need for a meeting arises, we will work with committee members and our managers to choose a date and time that works for everyone's schedule and accommodations for the heat. At this time, I'm ready to accept the motion for adjournment. Manager,
I'll make the motion to adjourn, but before we adjourn, I'd like to know if we're gonna meet like on a monthly basis.
I think we're gonna meet at least sooner to
That's
discuss,
great.
to set
That's fine.
things down.
Okay,
And then I would argue that the meetings need to occur when they're needed.
right.
I don't
Right.
wanna just meet to meet. I like the free coffee, but,
So I move adjournment.
okay, thank you. Second? Cynthia Brinson. Thank you very much. And the meeting is adjourned. Yeah, we won't meet till December.
That's between you and the chair.
We got La Nina to deal with here outside.